Rosa loved her grandkids more than anything. She'd come to America from Peru many years ago, leaving behind everything she knew for a chance at a better life for them. She worked hard, cleaning houses and taking care of other people's children, always saving every penny. Now, after so many years, Rosa was finally going to become a citizen. She was so excited she could barely sleep the night before. She imagined waving a tiny American flag and singing the Star-Spangled Banner. She practiced her oath in the mirror, her lips trembling with emotion. Today was the day. She carefully ironed her best dress, a pretty blue one with little white flowers. Her daughter helped her with her hair, twisting it into a neat bun. Her grandchildren chattered excitedly, asking her a million questions. "Abuela, are you going to get crowned?" One of them asked, making Rosa laugh. "No, mi amor," she said, "but I will get something much better, the chance to officially call this country my home." Rosa felt a flutter in her stomach, a mix of nerves and happiness. She couldn't wait to take the oath and finally be an American citizen. It was a dream come true, a reward for all her hard work and sacrifice. The community center buzzed with activity. Flags of all nations hung proudly side by side with the American flag. People chatted in different languages, their faces alight with hope. Children chased each other, their laughter echoing through the hall. Rosa's family found seats near the front, her daughter carefully holding a small American flag for her to wave later. The room filled with the smell of fresh coffee and nervous excitement. A woman at the podium welcomed everyone, her voice warm and friendly. She spoke about the importance of citizenship and the promise of America. Rosa listened intently, her heart swelling with pride. A choir sang, "This land is your land," and Rosa softly sang along, remembering the words she'd learned in her English classes. She looked around at the other soon-to-be citizens, seeing faces that mirrored her own journey. Faces etched with resilience, hope, and the determination to build a better life. She smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. She was among friends, among people who understood her struggles and shared her dreams. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The speaker started calling out names, one by one. Each person walked to the front, received their certificate, and posed for a photo, beaming with joy. Rosa clapped for each one, imagining her own turn. "Rosa Rodriguez," the speaker announced. Rosa's heart leaped. This was it. But before she could stand, two men in dark jackets walked quickly into the room. They looked serious and spoke loudly. "Rosa Rodriguez," one of them said, his voice cutting through the happy atmosphere. "We need to speak with you." Rosa froze. Her daughter squeezed her hand, a question in her eyes. The men approached Rosa, their faces stern. "Are you Rosa Rodriguez?" one of them asked again. Rosa, confused and a little scared, nodded slowly. The joy that had filled her moments before began to drain away, replaced by a cold fear. What was happening? Had she done something wrong? Her mind raced, trying to understand. The smiles around her faded, replaced by worried looks. The air, once filled with excitement, now crackled with tension. "We have reason to believe you are not who you say you are," one of the men said, his voice cold and official. "We need you to come with us." Rosa's daughter, Elena, stepped forward. "What is this about? What's going on?" "She's here to become a citizen." The other man held up a piece of paper. "We have an order. There's been a mistake. A mix-up. We need to verify her identity." He glanced around the room, seemingly unfazed by the growing concern. Elena's son, Miguel, pulled out his phone and started recording. "You can't just do this. This is wrong." Rosa began to tremble. "What mistake? I don't understand. I have all my papers." She clutched her purse tightly, her knuckles white. Her dream, so close just moments ago, was now crumbling before her eyes. The American flag her daughter held seemed to mock her, a symbol of a promise that was now being broken. All around her, whispers spread like wildfire. People gasped, murmuring in disbelief. The ceremony had come to a complete standstill. Elena pleaded, "There has to be some mistake. My mother has been waiting for this day for so long. She has all her documents. Check them, please." The IC agent, unmoved, said, We have information that someone with the same name, Rosa Rodriguez, is wanted for questioning. We need to determine if this is the same person. Miguel, still recording, zoomed in on the agent's face. This is ridiculous. You're ruining her citizenship ceremony. You're terrorizing an innocent woman. The agent ignored him. He looked back at Rosa. Ma'am, is there any reason why we might be looking for you? Any past legal issues? Rosa shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. No, never. I have always followed the law. I work hard. I pay my taxes. I don't understand. It was clear to everyone watching that this was a terrible mix-up. There was another Rosa Rodriguez, someone they were looking for, and these agents, in their haste, had confused her with this sweet, elderly grandmother. But explaining this seemed to make no difference. They were determined to take her away. The room felt heavy with injustice. Tears streamed down Rosa's face, blurring her vision. She reached out to Elena, her hand trembling. Mija, what is happening? I don't understand. Her voice was barely a whisper. She felt a sharp pain in her chest, a crushing weight of fear and confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This wasn't the day she had dreamed of. Elena wrapped her arms around her mother, trying to comfort her. It's okay, Mama. We'll fix this. It's a mistake. We'll get you home. She glared at the ICE agents, her eyes blazing with anger. Miguel kept recording, his voice shaking with emotion. Look at what you're doing to her. She's an old woman. She's done nothing wrong. He stepped closer, trying to block their path. The ICE agents remained impassive. Ma'am, we need you to cooperate. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Rosa sobbed, her body shaking uncontrollably. She clung to Elena, desperate for comfort. The joy of the morning had vanished, replaced by a deep, soul-crushing fear. She felt like she was drowning, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Her American dream had turned into a terrifying reality. The agents gently but firmly pulled Rosa away from Elena. We just need to ask you some questions, ma'am. It will be quick. Elena tried to hold on to her mother, but the agents were too strong. No, you can't do this. She's done nothing wrong. Please let her stay. Rosa, sobbing uncontrollably, looked back at her family, her eyes filled with terror. Amigos, she cried, help me. The ICE agents led Rosa out of the community center, the click of their shoes echoing in the stunned silence. The naturalization ceremony was completely disrupted. People stared in disbelief, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and sadness. Some began to whisper amongst themselves, questioning what they had just witnessed. The joy that had filled the room moments before was gone, replaced by a heavy sense of dread. Miguel followed the agents, still recording, his voice filled with fury. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The agents didn't even acknowledge him. They just kept walking, taking Rosa away from her family, away from her dream. The door closed behind them, leaving Elena and Miguel standing alone, filled with despair. Elena's hands trembled as she dialed the number of their family lawyer, Mr. Garcia. They took her, Mr. Garcia. They just took my mother. Her voice cracked with emotion. Miguel paced back and forth, replaying the video he had recorded. We have to do something. We can't just let them keep her. The younger grandchildren, confused and frightened, clung to Elena's legs, asking, Where's Abuela? When is she coming back? Elena hugged them tightly, trying to reassure them, but her own heart was filled with dread. They didn't know where Rosa was being taken. They didn't know what the charges were, if any. All they knew was that their beloved grandmother, who had done nothing wrong, was now in the hands of ICE. Mr. Garcia promised to look into it immediately. He told them to gather all of Rosa's documents, her passport, her green card, any paperwork related to her citizenship application. He assured them that he would do everything he could to get her released. But even his words couldn't completely calm their fears. The uncertainty was agonizing. They were lost in a maze of bureaucracy, desperately searching for a way out. The hours stretched on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Mr. Garcia immediately started making calls, navigating the complex channels of immigration law. Elena and Miguel, fueled by desperation, reached out to local community groups that helped immigrants. They shared Miguel's video with the media, hoping to shine a light on the injustice that had befallen their family. Days turned into nights, filled with frantic phone calls, endless paperwork, and sleepless worry. They contacted anyone who might be able to help: elected officials, advocacy organizations, even other immigrants who had faced similar situations. They explained Rosa's story countless times, each retelling bringing fresh tears and renewed determination. The community groups rallied around them, offering support and guidance. They helped Elena and Miguel prepare affidavits, gathering testimonials from friends and neighbors who could vouch for Rosa's character and her long-standing commitment to the community. They organized a small protest outside the ICE office, holding signs that read, "Free Rosa" and "Justice for Grandma Rosa." Despite their efforts, information was scarce. ICE was tight-lipped, refusing to provide any details about Rosa's case. The family felt like they were fighting a ghost, battling an invisible enemy in a system that seemed designed to keep them in the dark. But they refused to give up hope. They had to find Rosa, and they had to prove that ICE had made a terrible mistake. Inside the detention center, Rosa felt utterly alone. The cold, sterile walls seemed to close in on her. She missed her family terribly, especially her grandchildren. She wondered if they were worried about her. She pictured their sweet faces, their bright smiles, and her heart ached. She didn't understand why she was there. She had done nothing wrong. She tried to explain this to the officers, but they just looked at her with blank expressions. They spoke to her in English, and although she understood some, it was hard to follow their questions. She felt lost and confused, like a small boat adrift at sea. The food was unfamiliar and tasteless. She couldn't sleep, haunted by nightmares of the ICE agents and the disrupted ceremony. She prayed every night, asking God to protect her and to bring her home to her family. Days blurred together, each one feeling longer and more unbearable than the last. She saw other detainees, their faces etched with similar fear and despair. They spoke different languages, but they shared a common bond of uncertainty and loneliness. They offered each other small acts of kindness, sharing stories and offering words of comfort. But even these small gestures couldn't completely erase the fear that gnawed at her heart. She longed for the familiar warmth of her family, for the comfort of her own home. Days later, Mr. Garcia called Elena with the news they had been desperately waiting for. "They found her, Elena. They found the other Rosa Rodriguez." Elena gasped, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Are you sure? Is it really her?" "Yes," Mr. Garcia confirmed. "It was a case of mistaken identity, just as we suspected. They realized their mistake and are processing Rosa's release papers now." Elena immediately called Miguel, her voice trembling with excitement. "They found her, Miguel. They found the right Rosa Rodriguez." Miguel whooped with joy, his relief palpable. "Thank God. Thank God. We have to go get her." The news spread quickly through the family and the community groups that had been supporting them. A wave of jubilation washed over everyone who had been touched by Rosa's story. Finally, the nightmare was coming to an end. The injustice had been rectified. The sweet grandmother would soon be home where she belonged. But even as they celebrated, a lingering unease remained. The emotional scars of this ordeal would run deep, and the memory of Rosa's unjust detention would forever haunt their lives. When Rosa walked out of the detention center, Elena and Miguel rushed to embrace her. The younger grandchildren ran to her, showering her with hugs and kisses. "Abuela, Abuela, we missed you so much." Rosa hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her face. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The joy that should have been there was muted, overshadowed by the trauma she had endured. She looked thinner, her face drawn and pale. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, now held a shadow of fear. She flinched at loud noises and seemed to startle easily. The confident, vibrant grandmother they knew had been replaced by someone fragile and uncertain. Back at home, surrounded by her family and familiar comforts, Rosa tried to regain her footing. But the memories of her detention continued to haunt her. She had trouble sleeping, plagued by nightmares of the ICE agents and the cold, sterile walls of the detention center. She found herself constantly reliving the moment they had taken her away, the looks of fear and confusion on her family's faces. The experience had shaken her to her core, leaving her feeling vulnerable and insecure. Something had been broken inside her, something that might never fully heal. Rosa struggled to understand why this had happened to her. She had always tried to do everything right, to follow the rules, to be a good person. Now, she felt like she had been punished for something she didn't do. The anger simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. "It's not fair," she would whisper to Elena, her voice thick with emotion. "I worked so hard for this. I waited so long, and they just took it away from me." The dream of becoming a citizen, once so bright and promising, now felt tarnished, like a beautiful flower that had been crushed. She wondered if she could ever feel the same excitement again. The trust she had placed in the American system had been shattered, replaced by a deep sense of disillusionment. She also felt a profound sadness, not just for herself, but for all the other immigrants who faced similar challenges. She knew that her story was not unique, that many others had been unfairly targeted and mistreated. She felt a responsibility to speak out, to raise awareness, to help prevent this from happening to anyone else. But the fear lingered, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. The joy had been stolen from her heart, replaced by a quiet sorrow that threatened to consume her. Elena and Miguel made sure Rosa knew she wasn't alone. They surrounded her with love and support, reminding her of her strength and resilience. They told her stories of her past triumphs, of the sacrifices she had made for her family, of the countless ways she had touched their lives. The grandchildren drew her pictures, colorful drawings filled with hearts and smiling faces. They sat with her, reading her favorite books, singing her favorite songs, filling her days with laughter and joy. They didn't fully understand what had happened, but they knew that Abuela was sad, and they wanted to make her happy again. Elena took Rosa to therapy, helping her process her trauma and find healthy ways to cope with her emotions. They talked about the anger, the sadness, the fear, and the disillusionment. They explored ways to reclaim her sense of power and control. Mr. Garcia continued to fight for justice, exploring legal options to hold ICE accountable for their mistake. He wanted to ensure that what happened to Rosa never happened to anyone else. Most importantly, they reminded Rosa that she had done nothing wrong, that she was a good person, a loving grandmother, and a valuable member of the community. They reaffirmed her worth, her dignity, and her right to be treated with respect. Slowly, painstakingly, Rosa began to heal, drawing strength from the unwavering love and support of her family. Despite the healing process, the questions lingered. Why had this happened? How could such a terrible mistake have been made? What safeguards were in place to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future? The family struggled to find answers. They filed a formal complaint with ICE, demanding an explanation and a commitment to reform. They joined advocacy groups, working to raise awareness about the issue of mistaken identity and the need for greater oversight of immigration enforcement. Elena worried about the long-term impact of the trauma on her mother. Would Rosa ever fully recover? Would she ever feel safe and secure in her adopted country? Would the dream of citizenship forever be tainted by this experience? Miguel was consumed by anger and frustration. He couldn't shake the feeling that his grandmother had been unfairly targeted, that she had been a victim of a system that was biased against immigrants. He wanted to hold those responsible accountable, to ensure that no other family had to endure what they had gone through. The family knew that their fight was far from over. They were determined to seek justice for Rosa and to advocate for a more humane and equitable immigration system. They hoped that by sharing their story, they could make a difference, inspiring others to stand up for what is right. Months later, Rosa received a letter from the immigration services informing her that she could reschedule her naturalization ceremony. A mix of emotions washed over her: relief, gratitude, but also a lingering anxiety. This time, the ceremony was smaller, more intimate. The community groups who had supported her were there, along with her family and Mr. Garcia. As Rosa raised her right hand and took the oath of allegiance, tears streamed down her face. But these were not tears of fear or confusion. These were tears of joy, of triumph, of resilience. She was finally an American citizen. She had overcome a terrible ordeal, but she had emerged stronger, more determined than ever. As she waved a small American flag, surrounded by her loved ones, she knew that the memory of what had happened would always be with her. It was a reminder of the challenges that immigrants face, of the importance of fighting for justice, and of the power of family and community. It was a bittersweet victory, a happy ending tinged with sadness. But it was an ending nonetheless. And as Rosa looked at her grandchildren, their faces beaming with pride, she knew that she had made the right choice all those years ago, when she had left her home in Peru in search of a better life. Her journey had been difficult, but she had persevered, and now she was finally home.